Wendell's World in Sports, a sports talk podcast that is unique, making you laugh and making you think. Talking about sports with a different twist, with a style and flair as attractive and beautiful as my Alexa Bliss. I go after the everyday of sports topics with the fury of Tyson, running over the competition like I was a bison, slicing through the bad taste and nonsense like a hot knife through butter. For those coming after me unprepared, take yourself back to the podcasting gutter. If I were a prospect in the podcasting draft, I'd be selected number one like Trayvon Walker based on my skills as an exceptional sports talker, my talent generational, my rhythm and style beyond sensational. Great like the Say Hey Kid they named Willie, my podcast being heard from Queensland to Philly. You say my sports talk podcast can't compete with yours? Man, don't be so damn silly. For the 2022 NFL season, I discuss which teams we are believing will be championship competing, the chances of the LA Rams repeating Justin Herbert's impact on the sport increasing, and I do it in a fashion you'll find pleasing. Giving my thoughts and opinions about who's the best team in the NFL, how Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos gel. Will Cincinnati go back to being Bungles or remain Bengals? These mysteries and other NFL topics I will untangle. So watch and listen to my podcast and have yourself a blast. Download and subscribe real fast. Can you dig what I'm saying like my man Shaft? Wendell's World in Sports. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and tune in anywhere, anyhow, in any way you listen to your favorite podcast.
Right on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most unique, entertaining, and compelling sports talk podcast you'll ever listen to.
Let's be great. Let's be great.
Wendell's World in Sports with the one and only Wendell Wallace.
Giannis charging down the lane to the rim, double clutch, no good, tipped in. Giannis tipped it home.
Subscribe, rate, and review anywhere and everywhere you listen to this and all your favorite podcasts. And now, from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, rip, roaring, and ready to rumble, Wendell Wallace.
And welcome to Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. A lot of things to get down on and discuss today in the world of sports. Before I go on, I just want to say, darling, I might not know much. I know I love you so much. My life depends on your touch. But my love is like a river running so deep. When I'm inside it, it's a soul deep. Too big to hide and it can't be denied. My love is a river running so deep. Thank you so much, Box Tops. Just finished listening to that before I got over here and did my podcast. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. A lot of things to get down on and discuss today in the world of sports. Would like to thank everyone who's taking the time right now to watch this episode. I thank you so much. If you could just do me a favor, I would appreciate it. If you like what you see, especially if I'm speaking with the ladies between the ages of 42 and 49, if you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel and also like the video. If you do not like what you see, you want to go ahead and just hear what I'm talking about. If you don't have time to go on YouTube and do the watching of my program, maybe you like the audio episode that I do better than the video. If you could just go to my audio anywhere where you've listened to your favorite podcast, Amazon, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, go ahead and find Wendell's World of Sports. Go ahead and download, subscribe, rate, review. Most importantly, enjoy the most unique, entertaining, thought-provoking sports talk podcast that you can listen to. If you could do either one of those two things, or maybe do both. What the heck? I would very much appreciate it. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. A lot of good stuff to get into today. As you know, here in the racist, ignorant, selfish, divided states of America, the countdown to the NFL regular season, America's sport, is quickly approaching. First game is less than a week away. I'm recording this, I'm filming this, I'm publishing this on I'm doing this on a Friday. By the time I put in all of the highlights and all that type of stuff and download it to YouTube, it'll probably be out late Friday night if you're in Hawaii, or Saturday morning if you're in North America, or maybe sometime on a late Saturday night, Sunday morning if you're somewhere over in New Zealand or Australia. But whenever the first game of the 2022 NFL season is less than a week away, August 4th, the Hall of Fame game, the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. The 2022 Hall of Fame class is going to be inducted that Saturday, August the 6th. The Hall of Fame class for the NFL, pretty good class. Decent class. When you're speaking about Tony Baselli, played for Jacksonville from 1995 to 2002. When you're speaking about a member of the NFL's all 1990s team, made the Pro Bowl five-time, three-time All-Pro. Leroy Butler, the innovator, the creator of the Lambeau Leap, playing for the Packers from 1990 to 2001, named All-Pro each year from 1996, 1998, one of the best safeties of his time. During that run, also won himself a Super Bowl. Didn't hurt with his resume when it regards to Canton. Linebacker for the Carolina Panthers, 1986 to 1997. Sam Mills, a five-time Pro Bowler, had nearly 1,300 tackles, 20 and a half sacks, 22 forced fumbles, and 23 fumble recoveries. Speaking about greatness, speaking about consistency in terms of high level of play, played 11 seasons, and at the age of 37, he received his first All-Pro selection while helping lead the Panthers to the NFC Championship game, again solidifying his credentials to be nominated for the Hall of Fame. Richard Seymour, New England Patriot, 2001-2012, helped the Patriots capture their first of 6 Super Bowls during his rookie season, led New England as a 3-time champion, 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. Then, as Bill Belichick always wants to do before someone gets traded or gets released or does something in terms of his impact on the team, 1 year too late before 1 year too early, Bill Belichick does the latter and goes ahead and corrects the problem or makes the decision 1 year too early when it comes to the prime years of a player on his team with the New England Patriots, especially one who was going to be coming up for a fat contract extension. So Seymour was traded to the Oakland Raiders, where he played 4 more seasons and made 2 more Pro Bowl selections and was a pillar of the defense for Oakland during that time. So Richard Seymour doing tremendous, fabulous work for the NFL Network. He is also going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this upcoming weekend or next weekend. Bryant Young from the San Francisco 49ers, played 14 years, 1994 to 2007. 4-time Pro Bowler, won Comeback Player of the Year honors in 1999 after fracturing his leg the previous season. Is the second in franchise history, 49ers franchise history, with 89 and a half sacks. As I mentioned before on the audio podcast, when I was doing this, Cliff Branch just surprises me. It still surprises me because I thought that he was in the Hall of Fame already. Because I would have figured if you were going to put in Lynn Swann, then you would have already had Cliff Branch in the pecking order of the type of receivers during that era and the style of play that they had. I thought that before you would put in Lynn Swann, yes, I know he won 4 Super Bowls, and yes, I know he was the team of the 90s, the team of the 70s with the Steelers and such, where about half their team and their coach went into the Hall of Fame one time or another. But, I thought this was a situation where, man, I don't know if it was an Al Davis thing, especially when you take a look back at the amount of players that were inducted into the Hall of Fame. When you take a look at the 1970s Pittsburgh Steelers, who were the team of that decade, put in the work and had the credentials and had the legacy of having some of the best teams in NFL history with Mean Joe and L.C. Greenwood and Terry Bradshaw and Franco Harris and Lynn Swann and John Stallworth and Mel Blount and Franco Harris and all those guys. I mean, Mike Webster. So, yeah, you would think, of course, if you're talking about how many teammates or how many members of the Pittsburgh Steelers would get in compared to the team that might have been just as adored but didn't have nearly the success when you're speaking about the 1970s Oakland Raiders. I thought, yes, because of the ultimate success of winning Super Bowls as such, that more of the Pittsburgh Steelers would be going in, the individual players who made an impact on the Steelers winning all those Super Bowls would get first dibs in terms of getting the nod to go into the Hall of Fame if you're speaking about some of the greatest who've ever played those positions like Mean Joe Green and Mel Blount and such. But, man, I thought in a situation like this, I mean, Lynn Swann got in before John Stallworth. So, I know Lynn Swann was acrobatic and wonderful and all those type of things, but, man, this was a situation where it was kind of like when I found out that Cliff Branch was going into the Hall of Fame, and I was like, wait a minute, I know that Lynn Swann is in the Hall of Fame. So it took, Cliff Branch over a decade longer to get into the Hall of Fame before and after Lynn Swann? That was surprising to me, really surprising. But Branch helped revolutionize the game, becoming one of the most dangerous deep ball threats of the era. 1974, his first season as a starter, Branch led the league in receiving yards and touchdown receptions. Over the next 3 years, he would earn 3 Pro Bowl selections and 2 All-Pro selections, while again leading the NFL in touchdown receptions in 1976. He also played with a guy who was a Hall of Famer, or no doubt about it, Hall of Famer. Probably if you're taking a look and you want to compare wide receivers, the top 4 wide receivers in terms of John Stallworth, Lynn Swann, Cliff Branch, and Fred Biletnikoff, I would probably have in order Biletnikoff, Stallworth, Branch, then Lynn Swann. But he played, speaking of Branch, opposite of Biletnikoff, and Branch was brought in to replace the deep threat for the Raiders, which at the time, for years, was led by Warren Wells in terms of the responsibility that he had with the team in that capacity. But Wells got in trouble with the law. His NFL career was over very quickly, so the Raiders had to replace that speed deep ball receiver. So Cliff Branch, who again, I think he came out of Colorado, should have looked, but either Colorado or Colorado State. I know it was a university in Colorado, but he came out and took over the responsibilities that Warren Wells had for the Raiders, which was being the deep ball threat. But and Biletnikoff was the guy who was the possession receiver, the all-around receiver. But the interesting thing, once Biletnikoff's skills started to erode and decline near the end of the 70s, it was Cliff Branch then who not only maintained the responsibilities of the deep threat and the bomb, which the Raiders were so well renowned for, but also Branch was the guy who then kind of polished his receiving skills to where he was a really good all-around receiver by the time that the Raiders won their second Super Bowl with Jim Plunkett at the quarterback, beating the Philadelphia Eagles of Dick Vermeil, who I'll get to in a second. So yeah, I was just surprised. Cliff Branch, it took that long. He's no longer with us. He's probably catching passes up in heaven from Ken Stabler in the Heavenly Football League. But yeah, man, I'm surprised that Cliff Branch took this long for Branch to get into the Hall of Fame. Speaking, as I mentioned before, the team that the Oakland Raiders beat in, I believe, 1981, somewhere early 80s. The team that the Raiders beat to win the Super Bowl, their second Super Bowl in franchise history, the Philadelphia Eagles, led by Ron Jaworski, Harold Carmichael, and Wilbert Montgomery. That was my guy back in the early days, Wilbert Montgomery, number 31. But the head coach for that team was Dick Vermeil, who was an inductee into the class of 2022, this upcoming weekend or the next weekend for the Hall of Fame, after leading UCLA to a Rose Bowl victory over Woody Hayes' Ohio State Buckeyes. Vermeil then went to the NFL, took over a fledgling, pathetic, inept Philadelphia Eagles franchise, a squad that hadn't done anything for the longest of times, turned them into a playoff team in 1978, and then 2 years later, which was 1980, so there you go, the 1980 Super Bowl between the Raiders and the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 years, 1980, took the Eagles to their first ever NFC title and their first Super Bowl. Then, because he was burnt out, you know how emotional Dick Vermeil is. If you don't know, if you're from a different era, Google or YouTube Dick Vermeil emotional crying, whatever, and you'll get a whole lot of examples of him doing the thing in terms of crying. But after 14 years, he took a break because a burnout, went to college football, but doing the thing with Brent Musburger, was a very good analyst for ABC, doing the college football games. One call that I even remember today, with my memory fading because of old age and all of these things, I still remember watching a game with Dick Vermeil and Brent Musburger. I forgot the college game, but the tackle was made on my number 13, Joe Smith. And I tell you, Coach, interesting story about Joe Smith here. I mean, here's a guy who comes from a line of, I think he has 14 brothers and sisters. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I know it was in the teens. So Musburger was like, yeah, this guy came from 14 brothers and sisters and blah, blah, blah. You know the whole story. When someone comes from a large family, you have to fight at the dinner table, and you have to fight for mom and dad's affection, and you had to do all this type of, this is the same stereotypical, let's go ahead and someone who comes from a large brew. So after Musburger was done speaking about I came from a large family and he had to do this, he had to do that, little pause. Vermeil comes in and says, wow, one of 14 kids. Not too much defense played in that family. So it was like, get him, coach. Get him, coach. So, yeah, Dick Vermeil. Most deserved of the Hall of Fame. Took a 14-year break. Came back, coach the St. Louis Rams. The first few years that Vermeil was the coach of the Rams, they had a losing season. So it was a situation going into a third season with the Rams that he was on the hot seat. I mean, this was a situation where it was like, look, man, if he doesn't get the job done in terms of at least getting us close to a playoff, sniffing the playoffs or some type of improvement, or at the very least a winning record, this guy's got to go. And if that would have happened, would we be talking about Dick Vermeil being in the Hall of Fame, not just in 2022, but whenever? Even long down the line when Vermeil was no longer on this planet up in heaven, would he even be selected by the Veterans Committee down the road to be in the Hall of Fame? It wasn't until, in terms of the real validity of him becoming a Hall of Famer, was realized or really put into play, was the 1999 season when the St. Louis Rams transformed to the greatest show on turf and won the Super Bowl, led by some guy named Kurt Warner, who, interesting, going into that season, Trent Green, I think that he was a free agent acquisition at the time from Kansas City. This was the guy that was supposed to save Dick Vermeil's job for another year. He was the quarterback that was going to start the upward trajectory of the St. Louis Rams. But in the first game, or in the preseason, Rodney Harrison, who was then playing for the San Diego Chargers, hit Trent Green low. Him in the knees to where, I mean, nowadays, that's a 15-yard roughing the passer penalty, no doubt about it. That's just unquestionably not even up for discussion, the way that Harrison hit him. And tore up Trent Green's knee. He was done for the season, torn ACL and MCL and ACL and ABCs with your 1, 2, 3s. And some guy named Kurt Warner came into the game. And most people at the time, when you heard the word Kurt Warner being in the same sentence as NFL, you thought, wait a minute, Kurt Warner for the running back out of Penn State who played for the Seattle Seahawks is going to be playing quarterback for the St. Louis Rams? Didn't he retire like a while ago? What's going on here? Oh, Kurt Warner, a quarterback. He's a quarterback? And he's white? And he's from Northern Iowa? And he played in the Europe League? And the Arena League? And this guy's going to be the new quarterback? The starting quarterback? In a year where Dick Vermeil needs to win to keep his job? Well, it looks like for the 2000 college football season, it looks like Dick Vermeil will be returning back to his previous employment before he decided to break his 14-year hiatus from coaching and get back in the NFL. Because if Kurt Warner's going to be your quarterback, some guy who I've never even heard of, some guy who was cut from the Green Bay Packers organization because he couldn't make it as a quarterback, some guy who played football, his college ball at Northern Iowa, was never heard of as far as a draft pick, some guy who couldn't make it in the Arena League or the NFL Europe League, if this is going to be the guy who's going to be trying to save your job, then sorry, Dick, you're fired. But, hey, turn things around. We all know the rest. Greatest show on turf, Kurt Warner, running back Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, shocked the world. That was really one of the first times, and, congratulations, Dick Vermeil, Hall of Fame, wonderful. I just want to make this point because, as we know, more than anything else, more than baseball, more than basketball, what makes the NFL so great, other than the violence and the fact that you can gamble, is only on one weekend. You only have 2 games. You don't have games 3 or 4 days a week. The other thing that makes football so great is the fact that, man, you never know. Almost every single season you're going to have, and I've said this over and over again, and this is the reason why I say I never, when you go into the season, I'll talk about teams who are good, and I'll talk about teams who are going to be bad, and I'm going to be talking about teams who can vie for championships, win for championships. But, man, at the NFL, more than anything else, I don't make predictions. Even when you had the greatest dynasty maybe in sports history, the New England Patriots with Brady and Belichick doing their thing, I don't make predictions in terms of who's a Super Bowl champion, especially when football season's first over or the NFL draft has just concluded, or free agency as such, and we still have a couple of months before training camp, and people start talking about, well, what are the Dallas Cowboys going to do in the NFC East, or who's going to win the AFC West? Even when trades are made that are impactful for franchises, like Russell Wilson going to the Denver Broncos, or maybe other acquisitions or trades such as Devontae Adams leaving the Green Bay Packers to go to the Las Vegas Raiders, or Tyreek Hill leaving the Kansas City football team to go to the Miami Dolphins. And then we start talking about, well, what type of impact is that going to make? And does that make this team now the winners to win the division? And where does that put them in the pecking order to try to win the conference championship and Super Bowl and all of this stuff? I mean, you know, all of this stuff. And I'm like, man, I have no idea. You don't have any idea. And football, more than any other sport, is impossible to speculate. There's going to be a team this season, whether it be Houston, whether it be Detroit, whether it be Jacksonville, one of these sad, sorry sack teams from last year, one of those squads is going to make the playoffs. I don't know which one, because as of right now, I can't see it. I can't smell it. I can't taste it. I can't envision it. But guess what? That was the same thing people were saying about the Cincinnati Bengals last year. There is no way 365 days ago in the past, if we were speaking about who's going to be doing what and which team is going to be great, which team's going to be lousy, which team's going to... Nobody. I don't care if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, not a fan, season ticket holder. I don't give a damn. Mike Brown, the owner, I don't give a damn. Nobody would have predicted on July 29th, 2021, that the Cincinnati Bengals were going to the Super Bowl. Nobody. Give truth serum to Joe Burrow and the rest of those guys. Nobody thought that the Cincinnati Bengals would have that type of success. Coming off the season that they had, Zach Wilson mainly being at one of the top of the heap in terms of coaches who need to do some things to keep his job. So every year in the NFL, something like that happens. Every year, almost every year in the NFL, something like that happens. Nobody thought that the Cincinnati Bengals were going to do anything. And to rewind it all the way back to 1999, going into that season, nobody thought that the St. Louis Rams were going to not just win a Super Bowl, probably even vie for a playoff spot, especially after Trent Green went down. But Vermeil turned that program around, got him in the right direction, and again, with that victory, really solidified his chances of being seriously considered for the Hall of Fame, which, and I think deservedly so, he received that nomination this season. Wendell's World of Sports, I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Now, when you take a look at this class, when you take a look at the class of 2022, it's not one of the best in recent memories. It's not up there with the Hall of Fame class, the NFL Hall of Fame class of 1993, with Dan Fouts, Chuck Noll, Bill Walsh, Larry Little, Walter Payton. Not near the star power of 1999 when you had sorry Reggie White fans, the greatest defensive player who's ever lived up to this point, Lawrence Taylor, my hero growing up as far as running backs in the NFL is concerned and NFL players are concerned, Eric Dickerson, my man with the goggles from Texas with the SMU Pony Express going to the Rams. Ozzie Newsome, one of the greatest tight ends and retired probably as the greatest tight end of all time. So the class of 2022 is not going to stack up with the star power of 1999. Not going to stack up with the star power of 2004 when you speak about not just Carl Eller, who was a pillar for the 1970 Purple People Eaters of the Minnesota Vikings, one of the best front fours in NFL history, but also you're speaking about the most electric and dynamic football player who's ever played the running back position, with the exception of maybe Walter Payton for the old heads. Barry Sanders going into the Hall of Fame at that time, 2004, and one of the greatest quarterbacks who's ever played in the NFL in John Elway. The class of 2010, who, damn man, that might go down as the greatest NFL Hall of Fame class of all time. When you're speaking about not just the greatest wide receiver of all time, sorry Steve Largent and Don Hudson fans, when you're speaking about Jerry Rice, not just when you're speaking about the greatest NFL wide receiver in Jerry Rice, strong argument you could be possibly talking about the greatest NFL football player of all time. Right up there with Jim Brown and Lawrence Taylor and Sammy Baugh and Tom Brady and such. So you had the class of 2010 having it be Jerry Rice, leading rusher in NFL history, Ennis Smith, great linebacker from New Orleans, and Ricky Jackson, one of the best guards of his generation and era, playing for the Washington then Redskins, and Russ Grimm, the undersized defensive tackle who set the tone for the undersized quickness tackle that a lot of folks are looking for now, and John Randall, who played for the Minnesota Vikings, and one of the best running backs in the 1960s in the AFL for the Denver Broncos, who was named Floyd Little. So that is like, now we're talking about, come on now, you're going to be comparing draft classes or Hall of Fame classes and such. Doesn't matter though, man. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, guess what? Those guys, they don't get a separate wing where it's kind of like, great Hall of Fame class, pretty decent Hall of Fame class, not making the cut for the greatest Hall of Fame classes. It don't matter. Their bust is going to be in Canton right next to Lawrence Taylor and Dickerson and Sanders and Jim Brown and Dan Fouts and Walter Payton and Joe Montana and all those guys. It doesn't matter. And let me tell you something. Dick Vermeil is going to be right there with Vince Lombardi and Chuck Noll and Paul Brown and all those guys. And so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Tony Baselli and Sam Mills and Richard Seymour, they're not going to have an asterisk by their busts and by their plaques because their Hall of Fame class wasn't as great as 2004 and 1999. It's all the same, man. The color of gold is just the same. It's just as bright. And for those guys, it's just as beautiful. So congratulations to the Hall of Fame class of 2022. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. All right, I want to talk about this on the audio episode of my podcast, NFL Preseason News. I know that DK Metcalf got his money to stay with the Seattle Seahawks, $30 million guaranteed. 3-4 years, somewhere around there, around $72 million and such. So in terms of huge contracts, that's what the latest. We're still waiting on Lamar Jackson and others to get theirs done. But the contract that was signed that's been making the most noise so far in the NFL in recent days or week is Kyler Murray signing his contract with the Arizona Cardinals, 5-year extension for $230.5 million. And the details that came out about his contract. Now, it's been since taken out in terms of when you're speaking about the addendum, which requires him to study film for 4 hours a week during the season to stay in compliance with the deal. That was taken out. So I guess now Kyler Murray can go back to playing Madden football and relying on his wits and his natural ability to think the game for him not to go ahead and be prepared to play the game of football on Sundays at the highest level. Look, man, here's the deal. When you're speaking about this contract, as I mentioned before, 5 years, $230.5 million. The deal runs through the 2028 season. It includes $160 million guaranteed for injuries. He's going to make $105 million fully guaranteed upon signing the deal. The annual average of the deal for Murray is over $46 million, which is the second highest in the NFL, only behind Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers, who's making $50.3. Deshaun Watts' deal with the Browns, which in totality I think might have the or most guaranteed or something like that. I know that contract that Deshaun signed, even now with the signing of Kyler Murray, I know in some aspect there's some avenue where Deshaun Watson is still the highest paid player, this, that, and the other, but his deal with the Browns has an average annual value of $46 million. Murray's is $46.1. Patrick Mahomes' deal averages over $45 million per year. Remember when he signed that contract and people were losing their mind and can't believe it, this, that, and the other? I was like, man, just wait. We thought that maybe possibly that someone like a Lamar Jackson would be the guy to break the bank in terms of the next contract that would blow people's minds after Mahomes signed his deal. And you're still waiting for Justin Herbert. I guess is going to be probably the guy that's going to be averaging somewhere, about $53 million when everything is all said and done. I guess also when everything is all said and done, I think Lamar Jackson contract, I guess, is probably going to be in the mid-40s, somewhere around there. I don't think it's going to reach 46, But I think he's going to probably, my guess, Jackson's going to sign somewhere between about 38, 42 million a year, which 42 million, annually, which means that he won't have to be working at Denny's or worrying about what he's going to do in terms of finding a second job to supplement his income. So, look, as I mentioned before with Kyler Murray, an addendum that requires him to study film for 4 hours per week during the season stay, that's been taken out, right? So, according to the contract before it was taken out, he's going to need to, speaking of Kyler Murray, he would have to study material provided to him by the club in order to prepare for the club's next upcoming game. He's going to receive credit, or he would have received credit for completing his film study. The addendum also stated the time that Murray spends in mandatory meetings studying does not count, and that Murray also won't receive credit if he does not personally study the provided material in good faith. Here's the deal now. If they have that taken out of his contract, does he still have to do that in terms of, are the Cardinals still going to be giving him material to go ahead and prepare for the next game? While that is not going to be part of his contract in terms of if he doesn't, there'll be some type of financial penalty, or he'll be in a violation of his contract. But my deal is that, now how are you going to be treating Kyler Murray? Was this just something where it was just a bad joke or a bad idea, and we can just go back to status quo before the contract was signed in terms of his study habits, his first few years or couple of years or 3 years in the NFL? Or it's like, look, even though, if you don't prepare, even though this stuff is even though this language is no longer in your contract, that doesn't mean that we're still not going to be giving you information and giving you things to take home and study. That doesn't mean that we're still not going to be checking up to see if you know what's going on and see what's happening. That doesn't mean that we're going to, not kind of micromanage some of the things that you do as far as preparing for each and every game. So I wonder if that's going to be the case, and I wonder how Murray feels about that. Here's a guy who was up there speaking about it in the press conference, like, I can do this, and I won in high school, and I was doing this, and I'm great. But it's kind of like behind the closed doors once he's with the owner and the GM and such. I wonder how that's going to go down, and I wonder how everything in terms of what was put in there had some type of effect on his teammates on the team. Now, I'm quite sure for those guys, it's like, look, man, I got a wife and kid and other things to worry about, in terms of, Kyler Murray and this, that, and the other. But, just as far as a playing standpoint is concerned, I know tight end Zach Ertz, who was acquired in a trade mid-last season from the Philadelphia Eagles, came in and was talking about how great Kyler Murray is and how well he knows to play ball. Well, hey, man, how long you been here? About 15 seconds? How do you know what the hell is going on here? So, I haven't heard, except for maybe Zach Ertz, I haven't heard any outrage or, anything providing, Kyler Murray is, was wronged in having the team think about putting this addendum in and then putting the addendum in. And it's amazing that even Kyler Murray in his representation would even go for that. I'd be like, man, what the fuck are you talking about? So it's interesting moving forward. Maybe speaking about this here on Wendell's World of Sports, the podcast with yours truly, Wendell Wallace, maybe this was a situation with the Cardinals where they just felt that they had to do this because, there was this situation where should Kyler Murray be traded and blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. And it was kind of, the noise was kind of louder after the Los Angeles Rams spanked and embarrassed the Cardinals at the end of the season. Then you had the report coming out from Chris Mortensen, I believe in February or March, somewhere around there, that, sources close to the team, sources in the locker room, who that is, I don't know. But, Murray is immature and he's selfish and, he's me first and all those type of things. And then there's a little bit of the drama where Murray took off the Cardinals from all of his social media platforms, and that caused a big brouhaha. We thought we were going down a summer of Aaron Rodgers wanting to be traded nonsense and drama and all that kind of nonsense. But, maybe it was a situation where the Cardinals, despite all of the faults that Kyler Murray might have had, I don't know what he is. I've never met Kyler Murray. I've never studied with Kyler Murray. I've never been in the film room with Kyler Murray. I've never spent the week with Kyler Murray on game week to see how he prepares, so I don't know. Haven't been in the locker room with Kyler Murray. Hasn't spoken to any of his teammates about Kyler Murray. Hasn't been in any meetings with Kyler Murray, so it would be kind of ignorant and ill-advised for me to speak on the professionalism and the work ethic of Kyler Murray. But let's just go on the assumption that all of this stuff is true in terms of Murray being unprofessional, Murray not putting in the time to become the best quarterback that he could be, Murray being selfish, Murray being aloof, Murray not connecting with the teammates. Maybe all of these things are true, or maybe there's a kernel of truth in there. The Arizona Cardinals, the way they've constructed this offense, the Arizona Cardinals, the way they've put this team together as far as an offensive personnel is concerned, re-signing Kyler Murray was something that they had to do. They weren't going to trade him. I don't know of any other system in the NFL that Kyler Murray could go to and thrive in right off the bat in terms of not having to completely overhaul your offensive philosophy and personnel. So I don't know what team even would be interested in someone like Kyler Murray, his style of play, his stature, his height and such. So it was a situation where the output, the statistical output, and the impact that he's had on the Cardinals, to trade him, you weren't going to get back a quarterback that this season could have done better than Kyler Murray. If you were going to go ahead and say, look, man, we're going to trade Kyler Murray to this team and hopefully they'll bottom out and they'll give us a first, even though Kyler Murray probably was not going to garner a first round pick from any team. But, a situation where we can go ahead and get rid of Murray and we'll, wait for a season or two, or maybe there's a quarterback on the horizon that we can groom, or, without really a plan at quarterback, if you're going to trade Murray, that wouldn't make any sense for the Arizona Cardinals. So trading, releasing him, doing all those type of things was not going to happen. If you were going to trade Kyler Murray, then you might as well fire Cliff Kingsbury, because the skill set and the offensive philosophy and everything with Kingsbury and Murray are so tied together. Don't know if Kingsbury even have the it's just not going to be his deal to all of a sudden turn into Chuck Knox, or someone who's going to all of a sudden now turn him into Pete Carroll in terms of his offensive philosophy. So this was a situation where it's like, look, if you trade Kyler Murray, you might as well get rid of Cliff Kingsbury and bring in a coach who fits more inside of a box. So it was a situation where that was never going to happen in terms of letting Murray go in that case. So the Cardinals almost didn't have a choice but to sign him. And to sign him to a franchise that a salary or a contract that's going to make him, man, that's going to put a whole lot of expectations on that young man. So it's going to be interesting moving forward. Look, man, since 1998 or 1988, since moving from St. Louis to Arizona, Carson Palmer, Kurt Warner, and Jake Plummer, those are the only three quarterbacks that have had any type of sustained run as a starting quarterback for that franchise. Now, Kyler Murray has the chance to become the best quarterback in Cardinals history. Not just Arizona Cardinals history, but Cardinals history. When you're speaking about that franchise starting off in Chicago, moving to St. Louis before finally settling in Arizona. I mean, you could probably say the best quarterback in Cardinals history right now is Jim Hart, quarterback for the St. Louis Cardinals in the 1970s, wore number 17. And he was good. He was solid. But, just based on, I think he played for the Cardinals like 17, 18, 19 years, some nonsense like that. But, when everything is all said and done, Murray has the potential to be the best quarterback in history. He had the best chance of being the best quarterback in Cardinals history, which is 1988 to present, so we're speaking about 34 years. I think right now the leader of the pack is Kurt Warner, due to the fact of what he did with the Cardinals, taking them to a Super Bowl when he was the quarterback. But, this was a situation where both Carson Palmer and Kurt Warner were not homegrown prospects and homegrown players for the Cardinals. They both came over as free agents or trades or whatever. They weren't drafted by the Cardinals. You want to go to that regard, Jake Plummer is the guy in Arizona Cardinals history who has been, I guess you could say, the Mount Rushmore or top of the line, king of the hill, whatever cliche you want to use in terms of Arizona Cardinals. The most recognizable in terms of being a true Arizona Cardinal from the quarterback position. And I remember doing shows in Arizona at KDUS AM 1060 The Deuce when Plummer was doing a thing back in the late 90s. And for anybody who didn't have anything to speak about, all you had to do, I don't give a damn what it was, 24/7, 365 days a year. It doesn't matter what station you were on speaking about sports. If you wanted to get the phone lines lit up and you wanted to get some people's passions stirring, all you had to do was say, Jake Plummer, should he be the starting quarterback for the Cardinals or not? And it didn't matter if you opened up that question for discussion in February or May or July or November or October. It didn't matter. Those phone lines lit up and it was pro-Plummer, anti-Plummer. It was just like, good Lord have mercy, man. So, Kyler Murray had the chance to supersede all of that. And when it comes to quarterbacking and the legacy that he can have with the Arizona Cardinals, because you take a look at his first 3 seasons with the organization, there's been a lot of good in there. And the team's record has improved each season since he's been drafted. The year before that, they went 3-13 and had drafted Josh Rosen at the quarterback out of UCLA to be the guy that was going to turn things around. After 1 season and a coaching change, Steve Wilkes, only 1 year to try to turn things around. He was fired. They brought in Cliff Kingsbury. And Kingsbury was like, look, if I'm bringing my offense, which I am, there's a quarterback out there who's playing for Oklahoma, just won the Heisman Trophy, who would fit my offense to a T. His name is Kyler Murray. Goodbye, Josh Rosen, former number 1 pick from the year before. I'm bringing in Mr. Murray. So in the 2019 season, he went 5-10-1, but he did win Offensive Rookie of the Year. So there was some promise. There was some situations for hope. Then in the 2020 season, after starting off 6-3, Murray got injured. The team finished 8-8, but there was steady improvement. Then his 3rd season, the 2021 season, Murray went 11-6, made the playoffs for the first time in 6 years. The interesting point about this was it was a little bit of a pattern from the 2020 season in which they started off great. Murray was playing lights out, playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He got injured, the team folded, and then by the end of the season, they ended it with a whimper, with embarrassment. I remember until they played the Green Bay Packers last season. I believe it was on Thursday night at home, where I think the Cardinals were still undefeated at that time. There was strong talk. I was speaking about it on my podcast about Kyler Murray being right in there in the hunt to win the MVP for the season. But as I mentioned before, he faltered and got injured, and we saw what happened at the end of last season. So there has been some anecdotal evidence that shows that yes, Murray is a guy that you can win with and you can build your team around. He's the only player in NFL history with 70 touchdown passes and 20 rushing touchdowns in his first 3 seasons. He's the only quarterback in Arizona Cardinals history to throw for over 3,500 yards and 20 touchdown passes in 3 straight seasons. He has over 13,000 combined passing and rushing yards, which is 3rd most in the league's history during a player's first 3 seasons. So all of that is there. So I guess when his representation went to the negotiating table, those are all the things that they brought to the attention of the ownership and the GM position and the president of football operations for the Arizona Cardinals. Those are all the statistics and evidence that they brought to the table to say, hey, man, you need to be paying this guy buku bucks. To which the Arizona brass probably said, yeah, that's all great, fine, and dandy and such, but he hasn't won a playoff game. He gets injured too much, and he's immature, and he's not a leader. So where are we at here? Where are we going? What are we looking at? What's the deal? Whose baby is that? I'll buy that. So, look, in totality, first 3 years, Murray has been an above NFL quarterback. Correct? He ain't Tom Brady. He hasn't been Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, right? But in terms of what he's done on the football field in the totality of 3 seasons going into his 4th, He's a good quarterback. Is he $230.5 million good? Is he $46.1 million per season good? Well, we'll find that out as we go along, but he ain't trash. He ain't garbage. The most important position in the league, and maybe in sports, the quarterback, the Arizona Cardinals have a pretty decent one. You could do a lot worse. Being a fan of the now Washington Commanders with Carson Wentz, believe me, we could do a lot worse if you're an Arizona Cardinal fan. So to let him go or be released would be foolhardy for the Arizona Cardinals. But then again, you still have this elephant sitting in the room, which is the perception from somebody, and it had to be from ownership, because if it wasn't from ownership, they wouldn't have put that addendum, as far as the study and addendum in its contract, that clause in this contract, to which now has been taken out. So that there has to be something there. It wasn't something like the Arizona Cardinals said, or the organization or the ownership said, oh, by the way, I heard rumors that, Kyler Murray is not a good guy. Just in case, let's put this addendum in there that basically tells them to grow up and become a professional. But upon further review, we realized that we were wrong, so we'll take that out of the contract. It doesn't, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea where this is all going. But when you take a look at the relationship in terms of the need for the Arizona Cardinals on where they need to go, you can't get rid of Kyler Murray right now. Him and Kingsbury, they're tied at the hip as far as running that system. The only person who I think is more tied into an offensive philosophy and their skill set sets the philosophy of the offensive coordinator or what they want to do on offense, other than Kingsbury, the Arizona Cardinals, and Kyler Murray, is Lamar Jackson and the Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, and the Baltimore Ravens. That's it. I don't see anybody else. So, like I mentioned before, it was interesting that they signed him to that contract and then put that clause in there. Look, there was something in terms of, there were some kernels of truth to say, look, man, what are we talking about here? What are we doing? Where you say that, we need to put that in there. I mean, you realize what he said when the New York Times did a profile piece on him last December, right? I mean, you heard what he said about preparing and film study and such, right? I mean, he said that I think I was blessed with the cognitive skills to just go out there and just see it before it happens. I'm not one of those guys that's going to sit there and kill myself watching film. I don't sit there for 24 hours and break down the team and that team and watch every game, because in my head, I see so much. Right there. That wasn't taken out of context. That wasn't a lie. That's not fake news. That's not anything. That's Kyler Murray. And that's his thoughts and opinions about film study. If you're the owner of that club, what do you do? If you're the owner of that club and you're going to be investing that amount of money into a quarterback with that attitude, what do you do? How do you protect yourself? The Arizona Cardinals organization ownership thought that was putting in that addendum. Maybe they thought that was the way to go to protect ourselves. If you ain't going to be, look, man, if you're going to be making $230.5 million, if you're going to be making $46 million annually, guess what? You got to put in a whole lot of film study. They don't give a damn about your cognitive skills, and they don't give a damn about how much you see in your head and all that nonsense. I'm not saying you sit there and study 24 hours a day, but you damn sure better come close in terms of your dedication week after week to get it done. Because I'm quite sure that you can ask any of the greatest quarterbacks who's ever played the game, that attitude ain't going to work, Johnny come lately. Kyler, that ain't going to work, bruh. I see things in my head. Let me tell you something, man. There ain't nobody smarter in the game of football than Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, who've been doing it forever. Something tells me they'd put in a lot more time and have a lot more dedication to the preparation of a game from week to week than you do. So if Peyton Manning needed to do that, if Tom Brady needed to do that, don't tell me about I'm good because I see it all in my head. Because something tells me that Tom Brady knows a lot more about football, young man, than you do. And he might not have the athletic skills, but he still's got to put in the work. He has to put in the dedication. He has to put in the preparation. He has to go above and beyond. Same thing that anybody who's ever played this game at a high level at the quarterback position has told the world that you need to do. I don't know. I've never been near that, so I can sit there and say, yeah, that's the truth. You need to do this. You need to do that. But, let Joe Montana, let Steve Young, let Doug Williams, let Warren Moon, let Dan Fouts, let Peyton Manning, let Drew Brees, let all of these guys. They'll tell you. That bullshit about I see so much in my head and that's the reason why I don't need to be as dedicated as I need to be, ain't gonna cut it in any way, shape, or form. You are now making $46.1 million, my man. And we know what happens when that moniker comes. The responsibilities and the criticism comes when you make that amount of money. If you were paid like a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, if you were paid like someone who was a quarterback that's just barely hanging on or a stopgap, all of these quotes, all of this nonsense, even probably addendum. If you would have signed a contract extension that might have been a couple of years and maybe less than what Dak and what some of the other top QBs have signed for in the last couple of years, maybe this addendum is not reported. And maybe it's not talked about ad nauseum like it has been for the last couple of years or last couple of days. Maybe that stuff doesn't come to fruition. But when you're making the type of money that you're making now, guess what? Not having DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 games doesn't make any difference. Injuries, defense, coaching, whatever, franchise history, whatever. Doesn't matter. You are now the responsible one in terms of getting this team to where it needs to go. So don't give me some bullshit. Don't start crying. Don't be talking about I don't have this and I don't have that and we need to get this and we need to get that. Nah, man, when you're making $46.1 million, the lack of a great offensive line, the lack of a great running back, the lack of great skill players, the lack of a great defensive team, that's all mitigated because of how much money you're making. Aaron Rodgers is making over $50 million a year. The fact that the Packers had to trade Devontae Adams don't mean shit in terms of the responsibilities and the goals and the accomplishments that Aaron Rodgers is required to get the Green Bay Packers to. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes and them trading Tyreek Hill, the Kansas City football team trading Tyreek Hill. If Patrick Mahomes has an offseason, he can't sit there and talk about, well, he traded my best guy and he traded the most explosive receiver in the game. I can't do this. And the defense still stinks. And the offensive line had injuries. And we had new receivers. And the running back, Clyde Hilaire, didn't come back for a strong season. All that stuff is bullshit. Because it's like, you know what, Patrick? Guess what? Those things might be true. But there's a reason why we're paying you $45 million a year. Because you need to turn this chicken shit into some chicken salad. So that's the same thing now with Kyler Murray. And if he has this attitude about, well, this and that and in high school I was awesome and great, it ain't going to cut it, my man. It ain't going to cut it. Get your ass into somewhere and start learning that playbook. Wendell's World of Sports, I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you can be with us. Very quickly, I just want to hit on something because I saw this, talked about it also on my audio episode speaking about this. It was a story written by Keith Reed. It's on yahoo.com, the life section of it. And it's entitled Kyler Murray's Homework Clause and the NFL's Racist History with Black Quarterbacks. Interesting. All right. Caught my attention. Mr. Reed is a resident of Washington, D.C. So, if you're a man from the MD, D.C., VA, the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, my hometown. I'm Maryland born and Maryland bred, and when I die, I'll be Maryland dead. Caught my attention. So the story basically focused on what it says that an NFL team would demand such a thing as far as the addendum to study from any quarterback, but especially from a black quarterback in the year 2022. And some of the things that he wrote was, he said, the homework clause recalls an era, if it ever ended, when black quarterbacks were always questioned about their intellectual capability to play what's considered the most mentally challenging NFL position. Black quarterbacks throughout the league's history, or at least since the NFL finally allowed James Shaq Harris to become the first one to start a season at the position in 1974, have had their intelligence interrogated. They've been routinely lauded for their athletic acumen, while white quarterbacks are celebrated as cerebral. That's true. But I remember Steve Young when he first came in with the San Francisco 49ers, and he was running around and like a chicken with his head cut off and doing all those things. It took Steve Young some time, longer than what it should have been, for him to also break that moniker of, well, he's just a guy who's just, athletically getting it done, and he's getting it done more with his athleticism than he is being a traditional pocket quarterback. And, NFL, when you're speaking about now the integration or the realization that the black man can play a quarterback at the highest level, I mean, we're coming at it here from all different angles. We're coming at the game now as far as, when we're speaking about the black community, basically, and especially in this country, changing everything for the better, right? I mean, how sorry and how pathetic and how uncool and how dull and how boring and how out of touch and how I dealing with any of this stuff with our music and our dress and our walk and our talk and our everyday way of life. How boring, how nauseating, just like dull would our culture or would this country and the world be if it wasn't for the black community and the contributions that they've made, not just in building this country, not just making sure that we didn't become just a part of the of England's rule back in the Civil War with the help of France. Just imagine how boring and dull it would be if black folks didn't contribute to the arts and to music and to sport and to athleticism, to their genius and other things such as, their intellect and such. How boring would it be? How boring would the NFL be if they were still stringent on the fact that you had to be 6'5", 230 pounds and be a statue in the backfield to play football or be a successful quarterback? Could you imagine if the NFL was so ignorant and so backwards and so out of touch and so stringent and so not with the times that they wouldn't allow someone like a Michael Vick, they wouldn't allow someone like a Randall Cunningham, they wouldn't allow some of those guys to go ahead and do their thing, to go ahead and bring their flavor, to go ahead and bring their skills, to go ahead and bring in their expertise to the game, their athleticism to the game. Oh, and by the way, those guys evolving into thinking men's quarterbacks. When you're speaking about Warren Moon being more of the old school type who made the Hall of Fame, first black quarterback who made the Hall of Fame. When we're speaking about Doug Williams, the first black man to lead a team to the Super Bowl championship. When you're speaking about someone like a Donovan McNabb, who's not a Hall of Famer, but came close, who transformed from being a scrambler and a Steve Young type of athlete at the quarterback position to a more thinking man's quarterback who played at a high level and led Philadelphia to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, the league, just like the society, just like everywhere on the globe, has changed for the better in all aspects of life throughout the years. So, yeah, James Harris came in as your prototypical quarterback in terms of, big, strong, and for the most part, immobile. He had some moves, he had some grooves, but for the most part, he was the guy who was going to stand back there playing for Chuck Knox with the Los Angeles Rams. Took the team to the NFL championship where they lost to the Minnesota Vikings in '74. But, Shaq Harris was that guy. But in the AFL, you had someone like Marlon Briscoe, who was more of a Michael Vick or Kyler Murray clone in terms of style of play and stature, height and such. So look, man, the flavor has always been out there. It's nice to see that the NFL is now embracing it. And so, yeah, so Reed was hitting on all those things and, routinely being lauded black quarterbacks for their acumen while white quarterbacks are celebrated for their cerebral. Now, for the most part, and I guess maybe the one example that we still bring up in terms of some antiquated thinking about a quarterback in terms of him having a variety of skills at a high level is Lamar Jackson. And maybe with the Baltimore Ravens, this is one of the reasons why Lamar Jackson, on top of not having a top flight agent, one of the reasons why Lamar Jackson has not gotten paid yet or hadn't had a contract extension yet. And it'll be interesting to see, as I mentioned before, 38, 42, somewhere around there. It'll be interesting with the contract with Lamar Jackson and what he gets both in the annual the guaranteed money, the annual average, and the length of the contract. That'll give us a big idea or it'll be a referendum on what some of these things Mr. Reed was talking about in this article, where he's talking about putting that addendum that Kyler Murray had to study is racist in some ways. It brings up racist tropes in terms of stereotypes. So we'll see. We'll see, because Lamar Jackson is still that guy where people are still questioning, is this guy just a great athlete playing quarterback, or is he truly a quarterback? Or is he a guy that's revolutionizing the game of football again, taking what Marlon Briscoe and taking what Fran Tarkington and taking what Randall Cunningham and Michael Vick and all those guys and bringing it up to the next level. A guy who can play quarterback, a guy who can call a game, a guy who can read the defense. And oh, by the way, he's also the best athlete on the field also, as far as his speed and his elusiveness is concerned. So we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. But it was a very interesting article about that. And he wanted to make it clear, because he was speaking about Warren Moon and his journey to the NFL in '84, where he had to play 5 or 6 years for the Edmonton Eskimos and lead them to 5 Grey Cups. Moon, one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks, not just in the NFL, but probably the greatest quarterback in Canadian football history who's ever played in that league. But he had to start his career in the CFL because of the fact that at Washington, a black man playing quarterback, despite leading Washington to a Rose Bowl championship, didn't get the opportunity. They wanted him to play wide receiver and others. Well, that was in 1979, man. That was 1980. We're speaking about now. It's 42 years later. So look, if there's still a sense that there's some residue of ignorant, racist dumbasses in our society who still feel that way in terms of, well, we don't know if the black man playing the quarterback position in the NFL is smart enough to really be a quarterback that can lead a team to a championship or have success as a championship, that he needs to be a Lamar Jackson, even though they ignore the Dak Prescotts of the world, who's more of a old school quarterback who also happens to be black. I mean, there are some residue of that. There are some people, I'm quite sure, in organizations who are still backwards and ignorant enough to think that way. But the amount of people I would believe in any of those organizations would think like that, I think their thoughts and opinions, and most importantly, their impact that they have on the decision to put somebody, a black man at the quarterback position, in a position to succeed or to give him an opportunity, I think those people are so low down on the totem pole that their thoughts and opinions about it mean nothing. I mean, we're not talking about a head coach. We're not talking about a GM. Yes, hey, look, man, we got owners out there who are out of touch. And yet there's still a huge issue and problem that there's not enough black head coaches in the NFL, or black coaches getting a true opportunity, not just at the head coaching position, but also as the coordinator position, mainly on the offense. So, yes, those things are still right there, present, strong in terms of its validity. But in terms of now black men playing quarterback, having to overcome the stereotype of they're not being smart enough, they don't have the intellect, I think for the most part, I think that is done with. And even if it is out there, it's so minute that I don't think it makes an impact to where it's a problem in the game today. So, look, man, I understand what Mr. Reed was speaking about. It was a pretty good article. I enjoyed reading it. But he also said that none of these thoughts and feelings about why would they put this addendum in Murray's contract, being a black man, talking about he needs to study more, it kind of brings up old stereotypes. He said that none of this makes the Cardinals organization racist for requiring Murray to account for the work he puts in to improve the mental aspects of the game. They didn't need to expose their own franchise QB to the speculation, though, that he might be playing Madden more than playing real football, or that the team's execs were holding their nose while extending a guy whose commitment to his craft they thought stunk. At minimum, they should have known better than to treat the face of their franchise, the black face in the brightest spotlight in sports, like he was a remedial in a world that's always been ready to dismiss talent like his. Talent like his, meaning black. or not really talent. It would be more like that. It would be at medium. They should have known better than to treat the face of their franchise, a black face in the highest spotlight in sports, like he was remedial in a world that's always been ready to dismiss black men in that position. So that's what he should have wrote, but I digress. But so it's I think in a situation like this, I mean, thank goodness that I think we're past that for the most part. I didn't take that into any type of the ownership or making some type of racial statement by trying to denigrate or trying to imply that the intellect of Kyler Murray is somehow diminished or not at the level that they could be successful as a franchise by putting him at the quarterback. So if they really thought that he was not smart enough to be the quarterback, they wouldn't have re-signed him. If that was the case, or they definitely wouldn't have re-signed him for $230 billion. You don't, racists normally don't do that in terms of, they'll racist, ignorant folks who are prejudiced and stuff, if they were going to give Kyler Murray $230 million and they thought that, and they believed in those out-of-date, ignorant stereotypes, if they really thought that, Kyler Murray probably would have already won 3 Super Bowl championships and would have already been hailed as the greatest quarterback who's ever played. Probably the greatest football player who's ever played. Probably the greatest athlete who's ever played. And because of his employment with the franchise, the value of the team would have increased tenfold for someone who's racist, someone who's that ignorant in terms of thinking that a black man can only, there's only a certain level that a black man can perform at intellectually, and not at the quarterback position at the NFL. Kyler Murray, he didn't do enough to justify a racist to give him that type of money. So I'm gonna hold off on those things, racist, prejudice, privilege, whatever you want to say. So I'm gonna hold off on that. But as we move on, I will continue to go ahead and see how that goes. And it's really almost a mute point right now because they took it out of the contract, even though there should be some lingering effects to having them put it in to begin with. I mean, it's kind of like if you break up with your gal and your gal says, look, you ain't shit, I'm going to be going to someone new. She goes to someone new, realizes that, oops, I made a mistake, and then comes back and says, oh, you know what? I found out that he was fucking somebody else, so, he kind of threw me to the side, so I'm going to come back to you. Everything's cool. All those things I said really didn't mean it, so let's just go like nothing else is happening, like this never happened. You can forgive, but you won't forget. Well, it depends how good the sex is. Maybe if the sex is so damn good, you forgive and you forget. I don't know. If you're that desperate, then who knows? So it's a good thing that Murray for the Cardinals back, working on the relationship, getting together. All right, so Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. I'll be speaking more moving forward, both audio-wise and video-wise, with my thoughts and opinions about the upcoming NFL and college football season. But coming up next, man, after we get down and boogie a little bit, Kevin Durant, this news just won't go away, man. My Georgetown Hoyas, the preseason schedule is out. Excited. Guaranteed that Patrick Ewing will not be fired. And the end of an era in wrestling, which, as much as I admire the man, is a good thing. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. Time to boogie. Last segment of the podcast, last segment of the program, Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace, so glad that you could be with us. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode. Again, if you like what you're listening to, ladies, if you love what you're looking at, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And also go ahead and like the video if you will. If you want to go ahead, I did the same show, different avenues and such, but speaking about the same things on my audio episode. iHeart, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. Go there, subscribe, follow, rate, review, enjoy. The most unique, entertaining, thought-provoking sports talk podcast that you can listen to. If you would do one of those two things, man, I would like that so doggone much. Wendell's World of Sports, I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. So I'm going to end the podcast with a little bit here. The Boston Celtics have joined in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. According to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, the Boston Celtics are among the teams to engage in talks with the Brooklyn Nets on a possible Kevin Durant deal. According to sources, the Celtics appear no closer to acquiring Durant than others in discussions with the Nets, but Boston's ability to include all-star forward Jaylen Brown as a centerpiece in offers does help make the team's pursuit of Durant more formidable. The Miami Heat, the Phoenix Suns, and Toronto Raptors, oh, Yesai Jerry, you little devil, have varying degrees of interest in Durant, but the Celtics have also been a regular contact with the Nets, Sean Marks, and those fellas. So, look, man, when you're speaking about the Nets, what they want in return potentially include multiple unprotected first-round picks, pick swaps, and impactful players for Durant. Boston is able to construct a package for Durant that would include Brown and as many as 3 unprotected first-round picks when you're speaking about first-round picks in 2025, 27, and 29, and 2 pick swaps in 2024 and 2026. And Brown, who's 25 years old, has 2 years left on his contract and $56 million. So for those who are talking about, well, what about Jason Tatum? No, that's not happening. I don't blame him. As I mentioned before, man, on my audio podcast, there's only a few players you trade Jason Tatum for. One is Luka, the other one is Giannis, and the other one is Djokovic. And anybody else? No, not happening. Hello, Phoenix. How you doing? What, you want to trade me Devin Booker for Jason Tatum? Click. Hello, Philadelphia. How you doing? What's happening? Oh, Daryl Morey. Yeah. So what's going on? What? You want me to trade you Jason Tatum for Joel Embiid? Click. So I mean, it's it. I mean, that's how high I think when you're speaking about Jason Tatum, 24 years old. That's it, man. You got Luka, you got Nikola, and you got Giannis. Other than that, don't even bother. We can talk about anybody else, but there's nobody else in the league that I'm trading for that would have me give up Jason Tatum. So Dallas ain't trading Luka, Milwaukee ain't trading Giannis, and Denver ain't trading Jokic. So moving on. So, speaking about, here's the thing that's really interesting when they talk about the trade. And this, for me, really applies to the draft picks. Because in the NBA now, see Lakers when they traded for Anthony Davis and a couple of others. See Brooklyn when they traded for James Harden and such. There's not a lot of teams with a lot of draft capital. And you're speaking about now if the Nets are going to be trading Kevin Durant, and yes, getting a player that can impact in a winning way right away to go along with Ben Simmons. Many people have forgot the fact that Ben Simmons is still with the Brooklyn Nets. But not only do the Brooklyn Nets want a player who can really make a strong impact in return, who's going to be a guy that's going to be making all-star teams and be a guy that could be a focal point in a team winning a championship or at least competing for conference and NBA titles, it's a situation that really means go to the draft picks. Because when you're speaking about the NBA, and look, Brooklyn needs to recoup some of the picks that they lost when they traded everything for James Harden. So I can understand why Sean Marks and those guys are talking about picks and pick swaps. But here's the thing. The NBA and the business is so doggone fluid that when you're speaking about giving up Jaylen Brown and draft picks and their future to get a guy in Kevin Durant who's 33 years old and he's missed time with injuries and such, missed basically 2 full seasons because of injury and all this kind of stuff. So if you were going to be making this deal for Boston, you would be giving up your opportunities to win championships down the road. Hey, man, in the NBA, you've got about 2 or 3 years with the team that you have constructed now, especially if you're close. You got about maybe 2 or 3 chances to win a championship, and then then it's like it's time for us to go into a different direction. So when people are speaking about right now, maybe, I mean, player for player, absolutely Kevin Durant's better than Jaylen Brown. But the reason why Boston Celtics fans would be apprehensive, or just basketball fans in general, or those who would oppose a trade for Boston to get Kevin Durant would be, well, what does that mean for your future? Well, let me ask you this. And again, and we're speaking about them giving up a boatload of draft picks. I understand what you're talking about. But if the draft picks can be manageable, 2 or 3 maybe somewhere around there, and you can get Kevin Durant to trade Jaylen Brown, over the next 2 or 3 years, with the combo of Jason Tatum and Kevin Durant being the head of the snake that's going to serpentine to get themselves a championship, who gives you a better opportunity to win? Durant and Tatum? Or Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown? Because I would strongly argue, if you're speaking about next season, and the season after that, and the season after that, as long as the Celtics, along with the picks and Jaylen Brown, don't have to trade Robert Williams, I would say that you put Kevin Durant, and you replace Jaylen Brown on the Celtics with Kevin Durant for the upcoming seasons. I wouldn't give a damn about the 2023 first-round pick or the 2024, 2025 first-round picks or swaps, because I'm going to go on the assumption that it doesn't matter because those guys are going to be drafting in the 20s, in the high 20s, and I'll be out there competing for championships. There's no guarantee. Look, Boston made a fantastic run to the NBA championship, and it looks like they've constructed themselves a pretty strong team, led by Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But are you sitting there going to try to tell me that without question, that duo, the Batman and Robin for Boston, which is Tatum and Brown, can measure up to or be compared to Giannis and Chris Middleton, Embiid and James Harden, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo? And remember, Miami's still snooping around, and Donovan Mitchell, even though all prospects point to him going to the New York Knicks, man, never count out Pat Riley and Mickey Arison. Could you imagine if the Miami Heat got themselves Donovan Mitchell? Not saying Donovan Mitchell is the end-all, the be-all, especially after this season when he led the league in hero shots and bad shots taken. But could you imagine now a team in Miami with Jimmy Butler and Donovan Mitchell, or maybe just keep it status quo and Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan in Chicago? Is there really a guarantee that the Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be nothing surefire, of course, because of injury? But, I mean, where would you place those guys in terms of, those are the guys that are the most confident about going to take the team to a championship? How confident are you of Boston not just repeating as Eastern Conference champions, but then taking that next step and winning themselves an NBA championship? And you can sit there and talk about they were up 2-1 in the NBA Finals against Golden State. That took a heroic performance by Stephen Curry to swing the momentum of the series around. But you only get a bite of the apple so many times. And in the NBA, it's so doggone fluid. It doesn't mean because you had this opportunity that you're going to get another, especially when you're speaking about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as your 2 guys who have been through the tough competition of playoff basketball. But still, we're not talking about LeBron. We're not talking about Kobe. We're not talking about MJ. We're not talking about those type of talents that could sustain the greatness even though they have gone through the failures of losing. And maybe if this is a situation where, you know what, Boston wins the championship, Tatum learns from this experience, and he becomes one of those iconic greats that leads the Celtics to 2 or 3 more championships after winning one. Who knows? But, I'm not going to say it's poppycock or ding-dong to think about going ahead and getting Kevin Durant and trading Jaylen Brown for him. Because Jaylen Brown's a nice player. Jaylen Brown is an all-star player. But he ain't Scottie Pippen on a winning basketball team. I mean, when we're thinking about quote-unquote second banana, he ain't at that level. He's a good player. He's a nice player. I like his mentality. I like his upside. Because, yes, you can still grow and you can still learn and you can still get a lot better even at 25. But if you're speaking about getting Kevin Durant, and I can build a team around Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum with Marcus Smart and Robert Williams and Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon, to me, that's a team that's good enough to win a championship. So who gives a damn what happens if you're going to be trading a 2027 first-round draft pick? Hey, man, if I'm Brad Stevens, I might not even know if I'm still going to be with the organization 5 years from now. Who knows what's happening, man? You know, they could fire me in 3 years if I don't win a championship. Emeka Udoka, there's no guarantee that he's going to be around for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So what does he care what the team looks like in 2029 or 2028 or 2026? I'm living for the now, Jack. I'm not interested in that other stuff. So, interesting. Now, all betting points lead to both Durant and Kyrie being with the Brooklyn Nets when the season opens. But if I'm Boston, yeah, I'm listening. I'm listening hard. Now, if the deal falls through or nothing really grows from these talks, I don't know what the mentality. I don't know what you have to do with Jaylen Brown, because if I'm Jaylen Brown, I'm quite sure that my faith and my trust in you guys have been broken. The relationship is strained, is damaged, because man, I'm the guy who helped lead us to the NBA Finals, and all of a sudden I'm on the trading block this summer. Man, that's some bullshit. That's some nonsense, especially if I want to be on the team. So. We'll see what happens. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Quickly, let me go ahead and talk about my Georgetown Hoyas having a fabulous. Some of the guys that we have brought in from other places. Primo Spears, Brandon Murray. These guys have been great in the Kenner Summer League. It's been so wonderful to read the reports. Man, I wish I was back in the D.C. area to go over to McDonough and watch those guys play and get myself the first look at the Ryan Matombos and the Jordan Rileys and the Primo Spears and the Akuka Cook, even though he sprained his knee and he's not playing. And just taking a look at some of these young bucks, Deontay Baz and Denver England, and some of these guys who are going to revitalize the program, the loves of my life, the basketball program at Georgetown University. So, man, it's been 2 years of hiatus from, because of COVID and such, for the Kenner League to be doing their thing. But, I've been 4 weeks, been very much into reading the reports, the message boards and everything, talking about the players for Georgetown and how well they're doing. So, love the fact that Kevin Nickelberry came through, got ourselves a 4-star recruit for the 2023 season, Marvell Allen, who I'm quite sure is somewhere, I guess 24/7 has him ranked like 35, 36 in terms of the player rankings. He's going to Mount Verde Academy, so that'll probably move up a little bit. And let's be real, if Marvell, who's right now ranked 36, right? I don't know where he's ranked in ESPN, but he's probably somewhere around there. Going to Georgetown has him ranked at 36, right? So I'm quite sure that if he would have decided to commit to Duke or Kentucky, he would probably be in the 20s. Probably be in the 20s because, the stature of the school that he's going to. But that's fine. We need a point guard. We got ourselves a point guard for next season. We got one more scholarship left. We're in the running for a couple of other 4- or 5-star recruits. So, yeah, man, Kevin Nickelberry is getting out there, the new associate head coach. He's also in charge of recruiting, coming over from LSU, doing a wonderful and fabulous job. He got us Brandon Murray. He got us another player who, through this Kinder League, has been playing well, even though he's been inconsistent with his effort and his motor. Don't worry, Coach Ewing will bring that out of him when the season starts, or else he'll be sitting on the bench. So, I'm excited. I'm really excited. Last season was a disappointment. Last season was an embarrassment. Last season was painful. Last season was depressing. Last season was everything negative in terms of my emotions about college basketball, because Georgetown was probably one of the worst, if not the worst, Power 5 school in the country, without question. I know Oregon State was down there also, but as far as talent is concerned, from the ACC, from the Big 12, from the Big 10, from the Big East to the Pac-12 to the SEC, I can't think of another team that had less talent than Georgetown. That team was awful. And like Ewing said, God bless them, they tried hard, but those guys were horrible. I mean, they were losing games just because they just weren't talented enough. I remember watching them play against Villanova at Villanova, and Villanova was playing horrible. Villanova was playing terrible. 75% of the teams that played Villanova, they were ripe for an upset because they were horrible. Horrible. Georgetown never got anywhere between, I think Georgetown maybe got close in the second half, like 8 to 10 points. And basically, Villanova was just sleepwalking through that game. Villanova knew the team that they were playing and knew that all they had to do was show up and win. And that's exactly what they did. They just showed up. The effort from Villanova wasn't there. The intensity wasn't there. The passion wasn't there. It was almost like those guys had just come off of a drinking binge, and before they could, go into the bathroom and throw up and go to sleep and get off their hangover, someone said, "Quick, fellas, go to the gym. You got to go play Georgetown in about 15 minutes." That was the effort. That was the performance by Villanova. It was embarrassing. And they still beat Georgetown by double figures. And for Georgetown, they played all right. For Georgetown, it's not like Georgetown was playing really badly for Georgetown. For Georgetown and the talent that they had, they were trying, they were hustling, they were making some shots. They actually looked like a Power 5 basketball team for a little bit. So they actually played for Georgetown with the talent that they had. They actually played pretty well. And playing a team that looked like they were coming off of a 5-day drinking binge in Villanova, they still couldn't touch them. So it was nice to see Georgetown replenish and get in some new players and get in some new talent. Primo Spears, I think the transfer from Dunquees, is going to be doing some good things. Brandon Murray from LSU, right up there from Baltimore, came down when he was being recruited, came down to LSU and Georgetown and a couple of other locals before he went to prep school, then went to LSU. And when the famously scumbag of a basketball coach, Will Wade, was finally fired because he was just cheating his ass off, and the school finally did something about it, LSU being morally bankrupt like they are. But when Will Wade got fired, and I'm quite sure with Will Wade, some of the promises and deals and cheating that went with him, that was helping out or was part of the Brandon Murray package from Baltimore to LSU. And Kevin Nickelberry, with the assistant coach, came up to Georgetown. Brandon Murray follows. So we've got ourselves a really good backcourt, and Jay Heath, who's transferred from Arizona State. So we've got some talent. And when you take a look at the preseason schedule for Georgetown, this was a schedule that was made to say, hey, you know what, Coach? Right off the bat, we're going to be breaking our losing streak right here. We're not going to be losing 19 games in a row. I guarantee you. We're not going to be going into conference play with a record under 500. What you're talking about, they're going to be starting the season opener by playing Coppin State. That's going to be on November 8th. Then they're going to be playing at home against Wisconsin Green Bay, who I think last season was 5 of 25. Then they played Northwestern. Then they play a couple of games in Jamaica for the Jersey Mike's Jamaica Classic. I think Loyola Marymount and another team that's not very good, Wake Forest or LaSalle, one of those two. Then they come back and play American. American was so bad that the last season Georgetown beat them. They play UMBC, a team that was so bad that last season Georgetown beat them handily. Then they play at Texas Tech for the Big 12 Big East battle. Then they go ahead and play South Carolina. Saw them play South Carolina last season in one of the worst games I think I've ever seen a college basketball team play in about 10 or 20 years. Woo! Awful. 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 Good God almighty, Georgetown was awful. Then they come back and play Siena. Then they play at Syracuse before starting their regular season. So, yeah, the losing streak of 19 games will end as soon as the season opens. And sorry, bitches. Patrick Ewing is staying around for a little bit. That's what this preseason schedule represents. So, and like I said, a lot of new faces. But I'd like to see them play maybe a couple of more really good teams, possibly. But I mean, let's get into conference and do some things. People are speaking about, playing a soft schedule is going to hurt their NCAA chances. But let's see how good this team is. Again, I am excited about the new talent, but being a guy who was there for every single game in terms of watching, evaluating, and emotionally being invested in every single game from last season, and 6-25 and 0-19 in the Big East, hey man, I'll take competency. The bar for me to be excited and for me to be happy is pretty low coming off last season. So, well, you know what? I'm just going to be happy to see Georgetown win some games and have like acceptable talent on the court, and knowing that Marvell Allen is watching and getting giddy, because I'll be giddy. So there you go. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So quickly, let me get through this in terms of Vince McMahon retiring, forced to retire, of the chairman of the WWE. Triple H is now going to be the creative. He's going to be the top creative guy. He's going to be the guy that's going to say yay or nay. And the best part about that is that Triple H, because of health reasons, his wrestling days are over. So, you know, you're not going to see Triple H put himself in a wrestling storyline where he's going to be headlining WrestleMania. I'm glad that's going to be over. And because of his health issues, because of the Herculean task that it's going to take to run WWE in the position that he's in now, him and his wife, man, I don't even think he has time to be, putting his storylines and all this kind of stuff. WWE, the stock is strong. It's not going anywhere. Could it be sold? Possibly. Peacock, Amazon, all these guys, would be foolish not to go ahead and see what's happening. Nick Khan and Stephanie McMahon are now the co-CEOs of the company. SmackDown's coming this weekend. Everybody, I guess, there's going to be a little bump, because now with Vince being gone, he was so rooted in some of his out of date, out of touch ideas. People are now going to be interested to see exactly the new direction that WWE is going to go. I don't think it's going to be happening overnight. The storylines are going to stay in place. I don't know in terms of what's going to be happening with Brock Lesnar. I don't know what's going to be happening with Roman Reigns. I don't know what's going to be happening with Austin Theory. I don't know what's going to be happening with any of these guys. It'll be interesting to see, because you got SmackDown this weekend. It'll be interesting to see what the whole program with Austin Theory, Bobby Lashley is the United States champion. It'll be interesting to see if they have Austin Theory, who's young, and I've been one of those guys who's been complaining about, man, I'm really getting tired of seeing 40-something-year-old somebody fight 40-something-year-old somebody, and seeing high 30-something-year-old somebody fight high 30-something-year-old somebody for the 18th time. I mean, there's only so many Usos versus the New Days that I can tolerate. I don't care if you put them in a steel cage. I don't care what the stipulation is. I mean, week after week on Raw and SmackDown, we had to see the same damn thing all the time in terms of two participants doing their thing over and over and over and over and over again. It was like, come on, man. I mean, you lost me. So Pat McAfee versus Happy Corbin, The Miz versus Logan Paul, Bobby Lashley versus Theory. Is it going to be a situation where Theory cashes in, and then after Lesnar and Roman Reigns beat the hell out of each other, that Theory will cash in and become the new undisputed heavyweight champion? What they need to do is put a belt back on SmackDown and put a belt back on Raw. That's exactly what they need to do, because with the undisputed champion and Roman Reigns, because he's got 5 kids at home and he's been doing this for a while, he's not really participating in any of the not just house shows, but also fighting and wrestling on television. It's like, so what are we doing here? Where are we going? What's happening? If you put the belt on Theory, at least he'll show up every week, and then we can draw some storyline from that. And if he does get the undisputed championship from Lesnar or Reigns, what does that mean for either one of them? As I mentioned before, Lesnar hasn't been a full-time wrestler in a decade and a half, and Roman Reigns is starting to wind things down as far as him being a full-time wrestler is concerned, with him being, 38 years old. So I would like to see from Triple H moving forward some new blood. I think that, that the WWE has a lot of talent out there. To the contrary, everybody points to AEW with having all of the talent, having all of the young talent. And I would say, not so fast. I think that, you take a look at what was the main event on AEW a couple of weeks ago, that blood match between, or that barbed wire match between 50-something-year-old Chris Jericho and 40-something-year-old Eddie Kingston. Now, there's, you have, John Moxley interim champ because 40-something-year-old CM Punk is injured. They did Hangman Page wrong. I think this was the guy who could have carried the strap for AEW for a nice period of time, but they put the belt on CM Punk, who immediately then got injured. No fault of his own. He only didn't do it on purpose. But, what are we showcasing here? What are we showcasing with AEW? A lot of old guys and ex-WWE guys. So it's like, the talent now that Triple H is in charge is going to be interesting. I'm going to see what's going to be coming with Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins. I think Montez Ford is a star. I think the man is a star. I think the man is a star in terms of him being a WWE champion for a while and holding up the company for a while. Type star. Him and his wife are fabulous. Fabulous performers. They have the look. Bianca Belair and Montez Ford. You'll have two black faces heading the company for the most part. That would be a radical change and get people to take notice, and not because of their skin color, because Montez Ford is a tremendous, tremendous performer. He's a great talker on the mic. Down the line, I would like to see that. I would like to see that happen. I would like to see Angelo Dawkins get a chance. I would like to see Drew McIntyre. What was wrong with Drew McIntyre when he was the champ back in SmackDown when he beat Brock Lesnar? He was doing a fine job. Lost it to Bobby Lashley, but McIntyre was doing great. Why did you have to take the belt off him so quickly? Why did you have to take the belt off of Big E Langston? Now, Big E's been out with a broken neck, but why are you taking the belt off him? There was nothing wrong with that. And to lose like he did, the Brock Lesnar like he did, what did Vince have against the New Day that they would have to emasculate and embarrass the guys who were champions? Kofi Kingston got bitch slapped and embarrassed by Brock Lesnar in like 8 seconds. And then you have Big E, who had the strap at that time, lose to Brock Lesnar like that. Bye, Vince. It was nice knowing you. You did a lot for the company, and I admire you from taking the company where it was with your father and then doing what you did with it. But, man, it's out with the old and in with the new, man. It's time for some new blood in there. I think everything that you did as far as entertainment is concerned, despite your personal flaws and foibles, you kept that bad boy running through thick and thin. Some of the thick was because of your fault, but, it was a nice run. But I'm glad now that you turned it over to someone younger. Triple H is my age, so I like saying the word younger, to put some fresh new blood in there. So the SmackDown, it'll be interesting to see. Eventually Triple H is going to bring in all of his guys, the Bruce Pritchards of the world, and everybody that was on Vince's team is either going to follow a new philosophy, or maybe step to the side, or maybe take another role. But hopefully Triple H, who said that, might be head of creative, but this is going to be a situation where everybody's going to join in and be a collaborative unit to see what we can do to keep this bad boy moving and keep the trajectory going up. It'll be interesting to see what happens with MJF, who's going to be a free agent and somewhere around a little bit over a year, who has expressed that, I ain't signed up with AEW. He's been off the air now with AEW for a little bit. So it'll be interesting now with the new change in leadership at WWE, if it's almost now a fait accompli, foregone conclusion, that AEW's greatest heel, MJF, I'm better than you, and you know it, is going to go to WWE. He's a good worker too. He's great on the mic, and he's a great worker. So there's a whole lot of possibilities for him to do some things. So so these guys now in AEW, because WWE had the exposure, and they have the finances, and they have the platform. In interviews, MJF, the few time he was out of character for about 15 seconds, he was like, look, man, I'm not going to be Ric Flair, who's going to be wrestling at 73 years old. I'm not going to be a lifer in the business. I'm looking to do what The Rock did. I'm looking to do what Dave Bautista did. I'm looking to, translate this into Hollywood films and that type of thing. So he said, I'm giving myself until around my early 30s, and I'm going to be moving on. I'm going to be doing something else. So, his thirst, his passion, his lack of addiction to want to stay in the wrestling game seems to be headed towards somewhere else. So we'll see what happens. But thanks, Vince. Thanks, Vince, for all the good times and what you did for the company. we'll see what happens with the WWE moving forward. All right, I'm out of here. I want to thank everybody for listening to my podcast. Thank you so much. Stay good to each other. Stay well to each other. Live, learn from folks who are different from you and all those good things. And I'll catch you when I catch you on the rebound. Wendell Wallace of Wendell's World and Sports. Music.